Roll it. Sandra.
Slate 5, take 1.
Hitchcock is a great element of continuity in this whole story, because in a way the story begins with the French book on Hitchcock, Chabrol and Romay, making very big claims for Hitchcock and being received quite sceptically in orthodox British circles, but being seized upon by the younger generation. And then Robin writes his own, in a sense, follow-up to that book in Hitchcock's films. So Hitchcock is important in the 50s in France, in the 60s in Britain, and then Laura Mulvey in the 70s uses Hitchcock's films as an example of the objectifying of women. She sees that as oversimple in retrospect. Every generation is looking at Hitchcock and getting an angle on Hitchcock, and I just kind of insert myself into that process. And the guideline that I have is articulated by an American critic, Paula Marantz-Cohen, where she says to study Hitchcock is an economical way of studying the whole history of cinema. And not just history, but theory. That Hitchcock spans 50 years and he does so many different things in different places and in different styles, silent and sound, Europe and America, etc. I think it continues to be an absolutely legitimate field of study to look at Hitchcock, not to glorify an author, in a sense the reverse, to deconstruct Hitchcock and to show how Hitchcock is kind of formed by a series of collaborators, a series of conventions, a series of contexts. He is absolutely, the history of cinema is contained in him because he is the passive recipient of so many influences and collaborations. That's certainly the spirit in which I continue to work on Hitchcock, with a new book coming out next year with a French collaborator. I'm pleased that it's with a French collaborator, which fills in some of these points about how to study Hitchcock is to study the history of cinema. I think it's possible that Robin Wood's book on Hitchcock's films is the most influential book on films written in English anyway, partly because there were no film books before to speak of, not that sort of film book, and partly because it, as it were, kick-started so much author-based analysis and so much Hitchcock analysis. And it was just such a powerful and eloquent and earnest statement of the case for Hitchcock as a serious artist, the first line of the book being, why should we take Hitchcock seriously? And then the book answered it. Just speaking personally, I think the two main things I've written about, certainly in book form, have been, on the one hand, British cinema, and the other, Alfred Hitchcock, and part of it being the intersection with a book, not exactly a polemical book, saying that Hitchcock's British films are at least operating on the same kind of level as the American films, and there's a continuity between them rather than what was Robin Wood's initial view in 1965 when he said the British films they're obviously interesting because they're by Hitchcock, but they're negligible compared with the American films. Well, I don't think you can make that point now, and one of the reasons that you can't make that point is that the British films are all available. They're so easily accessible.